The following is a presentation of the Force Center podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the Force Center podcast feed, and this particular episode is the Mandalorian Report.
This is the way. I'm so tired.
We are both very tired. I'm sleepy Joseph Scrimshaw, and that is gravelly Ken Napzok. Normal listeners know I say the Mandalorian Report or the Bad Batch Report or the Obi-Wan Kenobi Report or whatever we're watching and report, and then Ken either does some great music or like a sound clip from the episode. And that was a perfect pause Vizsla. It sounded a little like he was either sadly passing away as he sacrificed his life nobly, or he maybe had some gas. I couldn't tell from your impression.
All of the above, which might be me as well. Yeah.
This is the way. Yeah, there was a moment in I was going to say today's episode, not today at all. We're behind in the episode where when the Mandos are escaping, and one of them's like, this way. Yeah. It's like, It's so close to this is the way. I almost thought there was going to be some cultural confusion of like, we don't say this is the way for directions. It's a philosophical version of this is the way. It's great. But we are excited to be back. Thank you, everyone. Everyone for everything. We won't do any large breakdown of our Star Wars celebration experience or Ken traveled to Paris. I spent some time in Nottingham and London. We both had adventures. This is my first day as we're recording back home. Ken's been home for 2 days. We say that with great liberty as, we've gained and lost time. We've time traveled. We're tired and gravelly, but we're happy to be here finally discussing this episode of The Mandalorian, Chapter 23, The Spies, written by Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, directed by, I will insert some opinion, the great Rick Famuyiwa. It is about 45 minutes of actual storytelling. We are going to get into it, but we do want to do a quick plug. We are aware that the Mandalorian Report is where we get more ears and eyes because it's the hot Star Wars show that's happening right now. So we do want to do a quick plug. We're really working hard to build our Patreon. We have realized that is where we get the most support directly from our listeners. We are building to some new things. We're having this Indiana Jones in the Perilous podcast discussion of Indiana Jones. We're going to be building up to Dial of Destiny. We're doing all those episodes on Patreon. After Dial of Destiny comes out, those episodes will be available to the public. We've done our first episode, but on Monday, May 1st on our Patreon, our discussion of this little film called Raiders of the Lost Ark will be out. Also, while we've been traveling, many of you have generously joined the Patreons who are very, very close to a goal at $2,000 a month. Jennifer Landa is going to make a new YouTube series of what we basically describe as NPR on Star Wars. Jennifer is going to take these old episodes, audio episodes she did for Force Center many, many years ago, and she's going to add some new bells and whistles, add some visuals. So they're going to be these series of visual documentaries on YouTube, and we're going to be able to make that happen when we reach $2,000. We're very close, so if you can help us out and you're interested, go check out patreon.com/Force Center. Ken, anything else to add to that?
Thank you to all of you who have supported, continued support, and future supporters means a lot. And not going to break down Star Wars Celebration. We had a going away episode from hotels in London last week. We'll probably recap some more of the new show, but a lot of fun. And travel, sick, both of us battling some illnesses as well, as it happens when you're packed into large spaces with a lot of people, regardless of the era or pandemics that are going around still. So anyways, we're back, we're ready, and finally ready to break down this episode, which was a journey in itself to get to.
Exactly. Yeah, I think some of my worn out is like, oh man, I wonder how I got worn out. Well, is it perhaps from being up for about 16 hours every day, walking miles and miles and experiencing massive amounts of beautiful, important, emotional things, and then sleeping for 2 to 4 hours every night? How did I get a little sick? I feel like the answer is in front of me, if I can find a way to see it. But we are going to talk a little bit about our experiences, because we always like this starting our discussion of the episode by talking about where we were at when we watched it. I think how we watch things does affect how we receive them. We had got the wristbands, the invitation at Star Wars Celebration. We were lucky enough to have press passes. So we were in the panel where they said, hey, come back with these wristbands and you can watch this episode early. And I really wanted to watch this episode with 4,500 screaming Mandalorian fans, but that would have meant not exploring the town with our partners. So we chose to wait. Ken, when did you finally get around to watching Chapter 23, The Spies?
After turning down the chance to go to the show, hearing all of our friends not spoil it, but talk about it. We'll talk about that in a second. And then I muted the Mandalorian on all social media. Went into a bubble.
This is the way. Yeah.
And then almost had it spoiled on a flight from London to Paris to London. Friday. Sit down and you have the guy right in front of you and you can just see at the perfect angle because I'm in the middle seat and he's on the aisle. So I'm just staring at whatever he's doing. And he pulls out his cell phone and he starts watching it. And I almost yelled, "You son of a bleep." Like I tried so hard. And I kept looking over and I kept seeing things. And so I finally I just closed my eyes, put on some music and avoided the rest of it. And he just stopped watching at one point. And finally got home and then unpacked. And there was a moment where Grace was like, I'm going to go take a bath and just relax. I said, I can watch Mando. So Friday night I did. I fell asleep in the middle of it, but then finished the episode after I woke up. So there you go. Took me, seemed like a week.
And do you feel like your falling asleep was just travel exhaustion?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, there's some quieter moments in this episode, which I wasn't necessarily expecting, but should have, maybe with just what Mando does. And I think in those moments, I just was like drifting off, just drifting. Fight it. This is the way to staying awake. But I've seen it, 2 more times since, so we're good to go.
Yeah. Well, that is a fascinating journey to have to look away from the tiny phone trying to get you on the flight. Yeah. I want to say thank you to everyone at Star Wars Celebration for not spoiling this. I kind of just embraced, like they showed us in the panel and in the overflow room. So a lot of people had already seen the teaser of the episode with the revelation of the Imperial Shadow Council and Paleon and Thrawn and I was almost going to say, and Gleason, Hux, the Hux/Gleason family conspiracy. So everybody knew about that and was talking about that, but there's a part of me when we couldn't go to it, I was just like, well, it's going to get spoiled and that's a fine price to pay for all the other wonders that we're experiencing. And no one did.
No one.
In our I didn't even overhear it in a line for anything. I didn't overhear it getting beers or buying action figures, nothing. I asked our friend Alex Damon about his reaction, what it was like to see it with people. And he was like, well, it was a perfect episode to see with people. It's like, great. And he said, here's the deal. If you really like The Mandalorian, the show, it's got a little bit of everything that you love about The Mandalorian. So that was what I went into it with. No spoilers, just that. Like, what does that mean? So I was really determined to have my standard experience, but to have it, in a different part of the world. I'm used to the midnight experience. We talk about the midnight experience, and I tried to prepare myself so I could have my normal ritual of like a drink and an action figure. I had picked up a Bo-Katan at Star Wars Celebration because I'm loving the character much more as we spend more time with her. And I wanted that figure to have the figure, but I also wanted it for my Mando viewing ritual. So I was at that point in Nottingham in an incredibly cozy little cave-like hotel room, just super cozy. Loved it. And I had a cup of coffee instead of a whiskey because it was 8 a.m. I had a cup of coffee. I had Bo-Katan. I had my iPad that I had to update to make Disney Plus work on it. But it was just this sort of perfect, ideal experience of like, this is the same as my normal experience. And yet, literally the other side of the day. So Sarah and I watched it together and it was great to be able, she doesn't normally watch it with me the first time because it's a midnight experience, but an 8 a.m. experience in Nottingham, she got up and we had our coffee and we laughed and we cheered. And, I was really affected by imagining watching it with thousands of people.
Yeah.
And then normally for me at midnight, I watch it And then I sit on my couch and I think about it and I write up kind of notes about the big picture ideas. And then the next day I'll, write down all the details and canon investigation and all that. And I just watched it and it just washed over me because the next thing that I needed to do is go on a tour of caves under Nottingham and then visit some of my own ancestors in a graveyard. So this episode was a great setup for both of the things I did that day.
That's amazing. That's amazing. All I had to do was go to the Eiffel Tower, so maybe that's why I missed it. There you go.
No, it was just I wanted to build it in because I didn't want to have your experience of like, I feel so far away from my real life. I'm in a cave in Nottingham, and there was a dude on the tour with me with the Boba Fett shirt. So I feel like if I didn't, that guy could have been like, yeah, and then Paz Vizsla dies. Like I don't want to be spoiled for the Mandalorian underground in Nottingham under a pub. Under a 400-year-old pub,
Yeah, it's possible. Could have happened.
Could have happened. So we'll see how those various experiences color our overall reaction as we get into that. What was your overall reaction to the episode? Did you love it, like it, struggle with it? Where'd you go?
Yeah, no, I absolutely love this episode. And what fun. And I think the description of everything that's come before in the Mandalorian, everything that the show has done, the creatures, the tone poetry, the high serial adventure, and of course the action. It absolutely is all present, and therefore it's been a very fun episode to watch. I do want to admit, and I've already admitted one thing: I fell asleep during my first viewing. I did suffer a little bit of the overhype train, where everyone in the world was saying this is the greatest episode of Mandalorian ever, and I had already seen the opening, right, which was probably would have been that big giant, oh my god, Paleon and Throne. I'd experienced that, and the rest of it, I was like, all right, okay. And it ended. I was like, that was fun. I'd rather watch The Believer again. I'd rather watch other, chapter 2 than this one again. And so I had to, and that just sometimes happens where you're like, God, I loved that. You all loved it. I didn't hit me in the same way. But on the second and third viewing, what I'm really enjoying, and this goes into an overall conversation about stuff coming out of Star Wars Celebration, this era of the New Republic that we're in. I'm so here for it. And I had to remind myself, because you know what I did? It was really weird. I looked at all the episodes titles on Disney Plus this morning before we recorded and before I watched the episode a third time and did my notes. I just looked at the titles, like what got us here? And I remember there's some stuff early on was like, I love what the show's doing. Lone Wolf and Cub, all that kind of stuff. But you remember, Joseph, this is why I like Carson Teva so much. Is he the only one going, what's going on here? And that comes from I felt especially the first season of Mandalorian was so good, but it felt like it was its own thing, and that it was not connected to any other parts of Star Wars. And I don't mean connected like a lot of other, a YouTube Easter egg connection video. Just like it felt like everyone was over here doing, like they've never heard of Han or Leia or stuff. And slowly the shows changed that, and this is intentional. Filoni and Favreau have had a lot of interviews given over the last couple of days and weeks about, hey, this is what we're doing. Yes, it's not, and Rick Famuyiwa is saying it's not just the Mandalorian isn't just dead anymore, and it's a question more than anything about who is it about and what is it about, and I pulled back and disconnect from any overhype, disconnected from any misgivings I might have, and was like, oh yeah, you know what? This episode is fully entrenched in this new era of storytelling that we've wanted to hear about for a long time, right? The Force Awakens comes out and we're like, how do we get here? And we're getting those answers, and that's what's getting me excited, particularly coming out of this episode, even more going into it.
I love what you're saying, and I almost always go back to this weird specific Lucas quote from some behind the scenes of Revenge of the Sith that just stuck with me, because it was the first time I heard sort of like the creator George Lucas just put it into words. This is a weird jump, but it's my honest jump. He's talking about the development of Utapau as a planet, and like they live in sinkholes. What kind of people would live in sinkholes? How would that change their culture? He's like, I'm all about the sort of the cultural anthropology every time we create something. And like in a lot of the movies and a lot of the big epic Skywalker sagas, we're zeroed in on individuals as we must be, but there's such interest in cultures. How do different groups of people become who they are? How is that tied to the environment? How is that tied to how they relate to the rest of the galaxy? What traditions define them versus hold them back because they're not willing to change. Like all these big ideas that Lucas is interested in, they're at the heart of Star Wars. They're at one of the things that makes Star Wars such great tip of the iceberg storytelling. We just see a little bit of something and go like, but there's so much there. And then in the Clone Wars, in Rebels, and animated series, there was an ability to dive into that, But I look at an episode like this and like, this is what Lucas has always wanted. Now we're really getting into it. We're getting into all of these different cultures and societies and how they define themselves and how they work together and how they become who they are. And can the New Republic pull it together, in time to stop this threat,
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot there. So anyways, that was my overall thoughts. Really loved a lot of stuff to discuss here in a packed episode.
Yeah, a very, very packed episode. I think I really loved it for a lot of reasons. I think one was that it is getting to the heart of the question that we've been talking about all season. And I think in parts of the season early on, as always, we respect a subjective experience. These are shows that we watch for fun. And if you're not enjoying it, there's your answer. But there was lots of questioning of like, where's this all going? And I think we and many other people were talking about it's this question of, can the Mandalorians come together? The shadow of Gideon has been in this since the first episode of the season, and Gideon is going to try to crush them. Will they be strong enough together to survive the final purge where Gideon proves he's better than the Mandalorians? And I think that's what resonated with me so much is like, okay, that's where it's been heading, and that is where we're going, and it's getting down to extremely practical, literal conversations and choices that are, can we bind together enough to face this existential threat to our existence? So I was happy that the show was getting to the heart of it, and it will make rewatching this season really enjoyable to watch all of the sort of ingredients building up to the stew that's coming to a full boil this episode.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. This to me it's still about Mandalore. It's still about the Mandalorians. It's still about Moff Gideon's relationship to them, which is why I don't even say I've been grumpy about it, but like the Thrawn of it all is something else that we're going to learn more about, right? And that's coming. But there's no Snoke answers here. Yeah, there's Project Necromancer. We're going to talk about that, all those kind of things. We got a Hux, love that. Praetorian Guards, love all that. This is about Gideon and them. And this episode, that's one of the things I think this episode did so well. So well. It's him going, hey, the Mandalorians, and everyone goes, woo, wubba, 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 Mandalorians. And Gideon, as he talks to the Shadow Council, which by the way, just they look like video game cutscene villains from the 90s, and I love that. Felt like I was playing Red Alert, Command and Conquer Red Alert 2. It's great. But it's very much about that, which is why I will argue with people. I think I'd started to do a little bit when I got a little too drunk in Celebration. Mandalorian season 3 is tremendously focused. It's not unfocused. It's tremendously focused. This is what it's about.
Yeah, exactly. And I think making it unignorable at this point. I think there was something also just tone and style wise that I really loved about this episode. I think Rick Famuyiwa directs Star Wars in a way that highlights all of the ingredients. And it's Favreau's script and it's Filoni's script, and I think they do that as well, that they want to have a little bit of everything. But this episode reminded me of the child of the second episode of Mandalorian. But this was like the child in terms of what was included, but 10 times bigger. Like, unbelievably to me successful, amazing comedy with the child, but meaningful comedy, right? Huge, cool action, but all of it just kind of having this sort of like this wry intelligence and wry humor to it that made it feel relatable. It's this mix of comedy, action, drama, sort of real world stakes mixed with, frankly, almost over the top myth, that I think sometimes there's this great tension in Star Wars where we get attached to the meaning of it, the depth of it, or the coolness of it. And then when a moment kind of knocks us out of it and pulls it back to like, it's a big myth with, heightened operatic villains who wear all black. And the only reason Moff Gideon is not twirling a mustache is because he hasn't found a mustache culture to steal their mustaches from yet. He is over the top. It is over the top.
Yeah.
And to me, there's a love of it, of like, yeah, this is Star Wars. You know, it's easier for us to utterly fall into the depth and the importance of the tragedy of Anakin Skywalker and forget, frankly, what somebody Rick Famuyiwa's age experienced of Darth Vader with nothing but A New Hope to go with, of like, that guy stepped out of British Panto, like not that comedic, but like he stepped out of opera. He's a heavy breathing armored cloak guy who chokes people. And he's got a laser sword, you know, like, and sometimes I think there can be like a fear of it, because that fear, is that too childlike? Is that less than in any way? And I think there's an embracing of like, yeah, that's what we're doing, you know. It isn't Breaking Bad, it isn't The Sopranos, it's not Succession, it's not trying to be totally subtle real world stuff, and or tackled a lot of that tone very successfully, and people like it, and maybe people are going to get to a point where they don't like this tone. But that's one of the things I liked about it. Of this was genre stew, this was espionage thriller, Mad Max hellscape, Jason and the Argonauts shout out almost, with a bunch of, you know, sibling warriors on a weird quest on a ship, attacked by a giant monster, heightened and operatic. Gideon is just a scenery chewing, black clad big bad, explaining why he's better and going to beat them all up. I love it because it is what it is, and it's owning it and loving it.
Yeah, there's actually a moment when he shows up at the end, right? And there's the biggest vaudevillian music cue I've heard in Star Wars in years. And I noted that moment, so I'm glad you brought just the overall vibe up. And so, look, and sometimes I'm open with sometimes the big kind of broad style, so to speak. Though broad could be used incorrectly, I think, to describe some of it. So maybe I'm wrong, but. Sometimes I rub up against it. Sometimes I'm like, what? Why are they making those acting choices? Why are they doing that? It's so big, but it's never wavered from that. And so either you're on board or you live with it or you're not, right? And I'm definitely on board with it. And at the end of it, I had so much fun with this. Yeah,
and I just think this episode was constructed in lots of ways to just go like, yep, we're celebrating that. Star Wars doesn't always have to be that, but we're celebrating it. You know?
Yeah, it does not, but yeah.
Two other real quick overall thoughts, and I want to get into the big ideas. I know there was some, you know, Rick Famuyiwa said some stuff about it's about all Mandalorians now, and while we were traveling, I saw just like a headline. I didn't get a chance to read it, but it seemed really clickbaity. Of Rick Famuyiwa says the show is Bo-Katan's now. Like, is that what he said? I don't know, you know. But I really do feel like this is one of those. It's fine if you don't like it, but why resist what it is? Is that it started at Lone Wolf and Cub, and the Mandalorian was Din Djarin, and Din Djarin was carrying with him this whole idea of what does it mean to be a Mandalorian. But it's an ensemble show now, you know? Bo-Katan is centered right now. It's not like Din doesn't have stuff going on and Grogu doesn't have stuff going on. But for me, it's an ensemble show, and I'm fine with that. And I'm also totally it's understanding if people like, I really liked it when it was focused on Lone Wolf and Cub, and Din was the main character, and I don't enjoy this as much. I got no problem with that. But for me, in the way I process it, it's an ensemble show, and great. That's what the creators wanted to make, and I'm going to embrace that. That's funny. That's almost word for word in some of my notes. Just like, I get not liking it. I totally do. And there's some moments, but this is like a lot of shows, man. There's a lot of big shows. This is just the natural flow of things, right? You know, sometimes I miss just a couple of Starks sitting around a dinner table talking quietly. Instead, I got 15 houses fighting for a throne. Like I get it. And sometimes I miss the little intimate, quiet moments, but I think they still exist. They just exist with more people. So yeah, never here to tell anyone, you got to be on board. I think you're, because in fact, anything, I'm confirming it. You're right. The show's changed a bit. That's always been
kind of the way, because it's important about this one guy, this one lone gunslinger is now connected to something bigger, because we all are. So it's part of the lesson, part of the journey, part of the joy I get from it.
Yeah, part of the lesson is great. Yeah, I'll share this real quick. Like, I knew Celebration was over when I literally landed, and it's like, I'll check in on Facebook. And one of the first things I saw was an acquaintance complaining about Star Wars. Like, yeah, it's over. It's over. But in particular, and it's always everybody, I want to be respectful of other people's opinions, but it was one of those, like, it seems like all this new Star Wars is the creators just trying to figure out what fans want. And I just struggle with that, because my experiences as a creator is creators try to make something that they love and hope that if it resonates with them, it will resonate with others too. And I feel like anything about the Mandalorian that's wonky and maybe you don't like, and even I think sometimes like, oh, well, I got this little criticism structurally that could be, clearer or whatever, all that. It feels like it's wonky and different because Favreau and Filoni are making what they want to make, and they wanted to do a show that starts small in micro and goes to the macro. And I think that's what we're talking about, and that's why I want to embrace it. I don't feel like it's this like, hey, what do you like? Some of this is like, this is what they like, and they want us to embrace it or not, Yeah,
exactly. Embrace it or not.
Embrace it or not. Final big picture thing that we'll talk about more in the comedy and more in the ideas, but the yes, walking down the street, the celebration of joy. My wife and I were in tears, and for the rest of the trip, we're exploring Nottingham and London and having extremely emotional things from tourism, but also to examining parts of our lives, like, hey, like my ancestors in a graveyard, and Sarah and I living in London, revisiting some of those things, like every time something really amazing happened, I was just like, yes.
Yeah.
It's gonna be go for it.
That sequence it was my favorite thing of the show so far. It really is.
Next level.
So much. I loved it so much.
Next level. So honest. So great. All right. Let's dive in. I held us up there with lots of overall thoughts, but let's dive into the big picture themes, the ideas at stake in this episode. How did you break it down?
I broke it down like thos. Working together is the big thing I took from this, and a lot of what was at play here for me. And also that involves things to trust, honor, and loyalty in a show that's about, can the Mandalorians come together finally after thousands of years? Like, I was affected. There was that great line from Dan of like, hey, for thousands of years, we've been on a brink of extinction for 1,000 years. We've survived, whatever he exactly said. But that was an inspiring line. But also, to me, that's one of those like, yeah, do you get it now? Do all you get it? Bo-Katan's trying to avoid that. And it's about working together. But then on the flip side, you have a lot of that imagery for me of people trying to work together. Can't the Shadow Council, the Empire remnants of video game cutscene villains sitting there. They're the anti-rebels. This has been pointed out. You and I are doing this episode after long after other people's episodes have been released discussing it. So I'm not saying anything new here. But it reminded me of the antithesis to good people will fight if we lead them, right? It's like evil people will fight if we lead them, and they can't get it together. They're backstabbing in front of each other. Yeah, we need new leadership. Yeah, well, you did this, you did that. They just can't get together, and so the danger. It's like the first group that can work together wins in a way, which is scary, and there's some pressure behind it. And there's the need for both tribes to step up. You even get the imagery of Grogu working in conjunction with now IG-12. True, even though IG-12 is not living, so to speak, he's got to learn to work with this new thing, and through that, find the balance, right? So balance means something pretty big in Star Wars. And in this episode, that requires everyone's trust, honor, loyalty, sacrifice. There's the difference in rules that's literally down to how you play space chess. Like, I understand that. Like, Rochambeau, rock, paper, scissors. rock, paper, scissors. My dad taught me that match was an option. And
What?
yeah, right. Okay.
Burn it all down.
Right. And so I would go into the real world and be like, hey, people like, let's rock, paper, scissors for it. Then I'd like throw a match out. They'd be like, what the hell is that? I'm like, well, you've never played with the match rule? And it would start many debates and fights. So I thought that was so great to break it down to a chess game in the middle of all this stuff. They're just like, how do we let's play chess, the two people that hate each other the most. And how you based on what we came before. I watched episode 6 Friday night. Grace hadn't seen it yet. By the way, I love that episode more and more. The stuff going on in episode 6 with Bombardier and the Duchess and everything, it leads directly into this of can't you all just come together? Can't you all do this? And I just thought in an episode that had so much imagery of people or groups appearing to be threats and you don't quite know. Mando privateers, they're flying over Navarro. Oh, it's an Imperial cruiser. No, they're friends. Welcome them. Survivor pirates sailing up on you. Are they threats? Are they friends? The armorer, we don't trust her. Axe Woes, we don't trust him. Flying stormtroopers. Look, it's more Mandos. No, wait, it's stormtroopers. This episode focused on that and how do you build trust from that and how do you work together when you just don't know. Threat, friend, foe. You'll figure it out, and you got to find a way forward through all that.
No, I think you're spot on. I think that's a great observation about the number of images of someone or something is coming, and there is like a real world. Like, yeah, you should be cautious, you should be aware, but you shouldn't pre-decide on the horizon. That thing is a threat, and there's lots of moments of them like, yep, something's on the horizon. What's coming? Is it a threat or not? It's a great visual, not poetry, but repeating images. I think that's a great call. I totally agree that big idea that they've been building is explicit in this episode, but there's also, I think, some great nuances to it, and that big idea of stronger together versus one true power. It's the light side and the dark side. It's Luke saying to the Emperor and Luke trading barbs that Luke's faith in his friends is weakness, and the Emperor's overconfidence is his own. Like for the dark side, they have alliances for the moment because they need them, and then once an individual amasses enough power, the most powerful individual will subject everyone else to their rule. And I think starting the episode with that of like, there's this rough allegiance with the Imperial Shadow Council because it is needed, but that we get all sorts of information. We get the reveal of Pelion. We get the reveal of Hux. We get the tease of what is Project Necromancer, and all this great and glorious stuff. But if you sort of strip all of that away, the scene is about jockeying for position, right?
Yeah,
and that Gideon wants to control that. And even the implication that Pelion is using the shadow of Thrawn, who may or may not be back, we'll talk about. Obviously, he is coming back, but from their perspective, like that's fun to talk about. It's all about jockeying for position. It's not about actually working together, right? For mutual benefit. They have to for now. And I think there's more stuff that goes on with Gideon that is about this obsession of wanting to be the singular power as opposed to being able to share power or draw strength from being together, all those things. And I think a great part of this is just sort of the plot level where we actually end up in this episode is by the climax of this episode. We have arguably 3 tribes of Mandalorians, right? We've got the Children of the Watch. We've got Bo-Katan's sort of night owl group, but then we meet these ragged survivors. So at this point, we're traveling with 3 groups of Mandalorians whose perspective on what it means to be a Mandalorian isn't just philosophical. It's shaped by experience. They all literally had massively different life experiences, including like where they grew up. And they share that of like Paz Vizsla looking down on the shattered city and going, I didn't realize it was that bad. And the other Mandalorian being like, I was there. And then these ragged ass, pirate Mandalorians being like, we've been eating glass for 5 to 7, whatever the canon timeline is. We've been living on hope and dead varmints, teeth are falling out, like slightly different life experience,
Yeah. Have you ever had shattered glass omelets for breakfast? I bet you haven't.
Is that the way? Is that your way? That's our way.
And by the way, I want Jon Favreau to make the next Pirates of the Caribbean movie because he loves pirates and pirates.
Privateers. Yeah. So 3 different groups, different experiences, traveling to the ancient forge, the heart of their civilization, the thing that connects them, brings them together. A forge is literally a melting pot of bringing things together. And as Armor talked about, getting rid of the impurities so that it can be stronger. And all of that has been seized by one selfish zealot who thinks he should own other people's cultures.
Yeah.
It's explicit but powerful, and I think the dialogue is quite explicit throughout this episode. From Gideon's disbelief of this cannot be; those 2 factions are sworn enemies, and it's Bo-Katan and Din's first line of I hope these 2 groups get along. They've never met, and what little they know about one another they hate. Bo-Katan could have thrown in there, and they play Space Monopoly real different. And Din says, they will get along if they want to survive. It is always our own division that destroys us. Even this new bit of information we finally get about the Death Watch is that the Armor says the Death Watch exists no longer. It's shattered into many warring factions. So these stakes of the Mandalorians are warriors. Their creed might be loyalty and honor and unity, but by definition, a warrior asserts themselves, and that makes it hard to cross the line and keep stronger together as your number one priority. And what I really liked about the episode and want to hear your thoughts on is I feel like the episode was raising that question of it is harder to be stronger together. So how are we explicitly seeing these tattered groups of Mandalorians overcome the challenges of being stronger together? And I feel like what we saw the power of community, like literally sharing food, right? We saw communication, sharing a frightening truth so that other people can actually understand where we're coming from. I think we saw the power of the next generation in Grogu offering a different perspective. I think we saw the power of uniting in common goals of like, well, we might disagree about space Rochambeau.
Yeah.
but let's not get distracted about dumb bleep like that. What is a big picture? What do we need? So the common goals, I thought there was evidence of, it wasn't just that sort of like stronger together. You're right. You have my sword, you have my flamethrower. It was, here are explicit things they are doing that are not easy,
right,
to try to build towards stronger together. What are your thoughts or feelings on seeing explicit ways in which they tried to make this happen?
Yeah, I think in a season, particularly, I was going to say a show, but particularly a season that is about trauma recovery, but it's also about trauma recovery on a large scale, right? When you go through something, I don't know, maybe we as a world have gone through something recently. Let's just say that. And yes, you're right. Put aside our differences and come together. That works. I think that works until you're sitting down to play a game or have a meal. And why do you do that? What is that? You put that on your toast? No way. Like, that's the little things that start to break us down in the face of the big things. So I think it is important. I really love that you highlighted that the younger generation, in this case, 50-plus-year-old Grogu, using his new abilities, so to speak, to be the one, because there's that great moment to your thing of like, how do you make this work? They're fighting. They're fighting like dummies over a board game, but it's real. And Axe, Axe is not looking at to be the nicest of guys right now. Says a disparaging remark. And there's that moment with Din and Katan, Bo-Katan. Should I do something? You can't. None of us can. Well, Grogu's like, nuts to your rules. I'm the balance of all of you here right now. I will. I'm not going to listen to can't. I'm going to do this to move us forward. And in the face of someone like Gideon, who, not unlike any other dark side character, dark side just meaning the bad side, whatever you want to say, saying, all right, great. Y'all think you want to come together. Isn't that cute? Well, I got you together. It's a trap. Thanks, Din. I'm going to use your community against you. That just makes it all harder. It makes it harder for all of us to come together until you sit down and have this moment. Say, you and I both just went through some wonderful cultural exchange over the last 2 days. And mine first time on a big scale to experience that, not in my home stadium, so to speak, right? I was in the visitors clubhouse the last few weeks. And to get the perspectives and we came together. The best moments I had were the quiet moments, not the big 5,000 people cheering in a theater over one thing we love, Star Wars. It was sitting in a tattoo parlor going, hey, here's a beer. Let's talk about things. So small moments. This episode highlighted the small moments that's how we build together. And then it all becomes forged by fire, literally at a forge, I think, when the big things are at stake. And can you stick together based on your little connections? Trust, honesty. I love that honesty is a big thing. Vulnerability. You can posture, you can puff up your chest and say, this is who I am and this is the way. But until someone can slowly say, no, that's not true. Let me tell you the truth. I surrendered. This is what really happened. Let's put it all on the table and let's build from there. Those are the building blocks, the true building blocks of change, I think.
I so agree.
Yeah.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was leading to a big finish I didn't have. So there you go. but it all leads to the face of Gideon. And I love it. I love what you're saying is like, he's trying to take the Mandalorian culture, not be part of it. Down to even, he got some horns on his helmet. Like, what are you doing? Like, come on. And how can you keep going through that?
Yeah. Yeah, and it really, I love you comparing it to traveling, and yeah, we were both in different cultures for a couple days, and in the grand scheme of things, not that different from the culture we know. It's almost more discovering those little things you didn't know that things seem so similar. So then when you stumble into something that is kind of different, you're like, what? It looks the same, on the surface in so many ways. I think that's really powerful. I like I said, I went to Nottingham because my line of Scrimshaws is from there, and I didn't really expect how much it was does it work this way? Am I from here? And like I didn't ever want to be like walk up to somebody from Nottingham and go like, I am of this city. Like my ancestors were, but is there anything that comes from this city that came with them? Down to me and being able to like tell random people, not random people, but like people ask at stores and stuff like, why are you here? And like, well, here's this, and I kind of expected people to be like, bleep off, great, but people ask questions and we're welcoming, and shared they'll share other stories, but it was great to have those that communication for me to be openly, honestly being able to say like, here, this is why I'm here. And to have people give their own perspective in response to that was powerful. So I think one of the most powerful parts of this episode you were talking about is Bo-Katan is taking a massive risk by sharing her truth, right? There is Cosca Reeves even tries to give her the little shake her head. No, don't tell them the truth. I don't think that the armorer is at this point. It doesn't feel like the story is on track for an armorer betrayal. We can talk about that more later. But to me, was sitting there watching it, it felt like, I don't think the armorer is going to think that was honorable to surrender. I don't think surrender is like the armorer has them hide to survive, but is surrendering the Darksaber. Like this is the same armorer who told Din that Bo-Katan is a cautionary tale. Of weakness. And she projected weakness to the Empire, and then the Empire saw that weakness and exploited it. That's the cautionary tale we heard her tell, right? So is this, a danger for Bo-Katan to express the armor? Is that gonna these poor raggedy Mandalorian privateers, right? They're like, we fought for you and waved your flag, and you did what? Like, it's a huge risk, and obviously it's a risk for Bo-Katan because she's ashamed of it. But literally Din's lines afterwards are, "I had no idea. We were taught that everyone but us had forsaken the way, that you were selfish and uncaring. Now I understand." Even if Bo-Katan's confession causes some ripples down the line with other factions of Mandalorians for this critical relationship between her and Din is seeing all these things about her that look like the way to him, to his version of the way, the honor and loyalty and character and a Mandalorian who is salvation, not death, all those things. But he's got this in his head, like, but I was told you were awful. And by Bo-Katan taking the risk and sharing her truth, there's even deeper connection to Din and that pledging his loyalty to Lady Kryze. I got to ask people who were there in that hall, was that a round of applause? Because it would have been from me if I was in the hall. But it all comes from taking that risk to communicate honestly.
Well, it continues with the Bo-Katan of it all, and that's so funny because that's if you're angry at a car, that's the moment you're like, it's not even his show anymore,
right?
It's literally almost saying that, like, I'm plugged into something bigger. You met me alone collecting a bounty in a bar, and now I'm bending the knee, so to speak, to someone who I feel is not a rightful ruler, but a rightful leader. And so much of the Bo-Katan story in this season, to me, and especially the last two episodes, are stuff I really enjoy. She wins the Darksaber because of who she was. You and I discussed that last week. She didn't win it in a great battle. She won it because she put herself on the line to save someone she was connected to, and actually at one point felt she wasn't connected to, Din Djarin. That's how she gets the saber. But now you learn that she lost maybe her position of leadership and the weapon that is supposed to be a symbol of it by again being who she is, someone of compassion, someone of, I don't want to lead us all to death. We'll fight like our culture teaches us to fight, but that's only going to end up destroying us. I've got to find a way to make us survive. And I was hoodwinked there, almost like it's not her fault, but you know what I mean? Like who she was. So she's confessing this truth. So much about Bo-Katan confessing her truth and just being who she is, despite even what she feels about herself at times. And that's something that's for all of us to discover. What's really beneath you, who you are, is what's important to the story, and might be where you get your goals, not just simply acquiring a saber for your checklist, but who you are and what your actions are for other people.
Yeah, I mean, and it's always the hardest thing for us, right, to share is what we are ashamed of in ourselves, and what we fear other people will judge us for. And for her to be able to express that and not have, every other Mandalorian there flip the table, and instead it leads to Din really seeing her and really complimenting her and giving her the support that she needs in that moment is that's an answer to, okay, Stronger Together isn't just a bumper sticker. It isn't just, we all watched Sesame Street once. We know the rules. We're kind to each other. It's easy. It's not easy. It's incredibly difficult. And I think that's the argument that's being made. And I think the whole game thing was so great. It was funny as hell to me. And it got to the heart of what we talk about a lot on the show about Stronger Together can be difficult because we are bombarded with messages of competition. And as we've talked about on the show, like, I'm not talking about sports. It's organized competition. It's something humans like to do. We like to list our favorites. Like that's fine. But when seeing everything in life as a competition seeps into our bones, And it gets us, I think, to this level that everything in life is a dominance challenge. Did someone step in front of me? Or what are they trying to take from me, right? Did somebody posted on Instagram that their life is going better than me? What are they trying to take from me?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
In fighting over a game, it is the culture. It is the slightly different rules. It is everything coming to a head, but it's also just stripping everything back to a dominance challenge of this is meaningless. It doesn't matter. But both Axe and Paz have to prove that they're dominant. And that by itself is really powerful because I think it's the challenge to one of the main challenges to working together, stronger together. And Grogu's intervention is so great because it is the next generation. It's Grogu taking a risk. But it's also a little bit about Grogu's heritage because I love Bo-Katan saying you taught your apprentice well.
Yeah.
Great laugh line of he didn't learn that from me and you want to stand up and scream. He learned that from Luke Skywalker in the Force.
Yeah.
And Yoda in the Jedi Temple and who knows, and maybe Tara Sinube and Keller and Beck, like that comes from his culture. That comes from the Jedi. Not that other people can't do it, but that let's not, this is a pointless thing to destroy one another over.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that because that's not the first time we've heard that, right? So far, I didn't know that for me. I love that it's highlighting not just what we saw with Luke and Grogu training, but Grogu's past and who he is.
Yeah, and then I think it was powerful that after Grogu's intervention, we see Axe and Paz work together a couple times. They're the ones who grab Grogu and lift him off the ship as the beast's tail is coming down. And I freeze framed. I don't know if this is correct, but I'm pretty sure it is Axe who goes back to the fleet to warn them.
Yeah.
And Paz lays down covering fire so Axe can get back to the fleet.
Yeah, get back to the fleet. Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward.
Report to Gideon.
Or report to Gideon because Spies, we'll get to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, is he just going to fly up and see that? Oh, that's right. The armor took the ship. What am I doing?
Yeah.
There are plenty of things to talk about with that and how that's all going to work out. But in spirit, it was Grogu stopped them from one or the other pointlessly dying or being horribly wounded, or both. In Shakespearean tragedy, they both fall over with one another's knives in their throat for what? And instead, they save Grogu. They work together to possibly make a huge difference and warn the Mandalorian fleet. It's a great little morality tale just in and of itself. The song of Axe and Paz.
Their song has been written, but yeah, love that.
Yeah, Paz's song came to a crescendo there. Yeah, and we already talked about it, but I just really wanted to note how much Gideon wants to, in contrast, all of this working together, in contrast to the community and the truth and the next generation, all that. Just wants to be the one man Mandalorian. That great line about how he's forged the next generation of Dark Trooper suit, and the most impressive improvement is that it has me in it.
Yeah, that was a big laugh in our house.
Yep, all about him. And then he name checks the cultures that he's stolen from: the cloners, the Jedi, even Mandalorians. That is, similar philosophy to what the original Death Watch with Pre Vizsla, spouted of might makes right. But if you can't defend what's yours, you deserve to have it taken. And in that way, I think Gideon is representing this other view of what Mandalorian society can be when it is all about dominance, right? And also just the utter arrogance that he thinks he's the one true power, but he's also admitting that he's built all this power by stealing other people and cultures' greatness. He seems to think he has some essential greatness because he is Gideon. But his list of what's giving him power is I'm cloning stuff from the Kaminoans. I got something from Grogu's Jedi blood. We'll talk about that. I'm wearing your armor using your forge. That's powerful if you want to play it out into the real world. And how often do people claim evidence? How often have people claim evidence of their greatness by the fact that they took the amazing things that other people built?
It's Gideon exceptionalism. is what it's.
It really is. It really is. What are some other big picture ideas for you?
The biggest one left on the table, a lot of them just jumbled into one big action-packed sequence. But, we talked about sacrifice. And, we got this great moment where we talk about it, I'm sure, in the action of Paz going out on a shield, so to speak. But I think that speaks to, it's the final... It's truly the working together, and this is a powerful example of this is the way. I think we've heard that so much, right? It's certainly a catchphrase and cliche, shall we say?
And a T-shirt,
and a good one, and a lot of fun. But this is one of the more powerful uses of it. You get to see it in action. It made me think of the one Din Djarin said to Bo-Katan when he learned of her father, and. So to do that, it's sacrificing. It's pride. Your own will survive. Family. Now Ragnar Vizsla's perhaps the last to have the house. We'll find out more about that. And it is we've seen this before, right? The hero that goes down for the others. This is Boromir. In fact, there's even some Lord of the Rings imagery of Paz pulling the Praetorian guards. It's what the orc does to the your guy does to the end of Fellowship. But to me, it's the final. This is what's at stake, and this idea of sacrifice is a real. It's a humble final act for if this is the way it's going to go, and so it's true heroism that's honoring the connection that was built, which is why if Axe, we'll talk about the spy factor, but if Axe is the spy, man, that would really hurt for Paz's death. I don't mean that in a critical sense, like take away from the moment in the story. I just mean for the legacy, for in the story. Gosh, that would be such a waste of that connection. And I would boo and hiss to you, Axe Woves. Boos and hisses to come. But you know what I mean? I don't know if that makes any sense. It's just we're talking about connection. We're talking about the trust and the honor and loyalty, and here's my truth, and here's who I am. Foibles and all, and can we work together through all of this? And it leads to this moment of perhaps the toughest of the tough, who's been an adversary to Din, who's been an adversary to Bo, he's been an adversary to Axe. Basically, if you've met Oz, he hasn't liked you. And he's the one that says, this is the way. This is the way forward. We survive like this is how I took it. If we all are willing to lay down our lives for the others, for the greater cause, for the stronger together. So again, easy to say on a bumper sticker, easy to do in a movie. I'll stay back. I'll jump on the grenade. Hard to do and powerful when done right.
Yeah, well said. And I really do think that is what's at stake. I've been obsessed with this way of looking at the show, the choice of who do the Mandalorians want to be, that title being implicit from when it was mostly Din's story and he was the Mandalorian and he was our one view of the culture. And now it's spreading out to all these Mandalorians and the entire covert of the Children of the Watch, choosing what parts of the creed do they truly want to invest meaning and support in. And this idea that to me is inherent in that first season of when somebody looks up and sees Mandalorians, do they tremble in fear at their might and the death they can deliver? Or do they rejoice because help is there, salvation is there, possibility is there, neighbors are there? And I felt like there were a lot of images in this, and there were a lot of fist pumping moments of Mandalorians choosing to be the best version of themselves. A weird bumper sticker way to say it, but that image of the Imperial light cruiser and the fear of it, the Empire is here. It really reminded me of Grogu looking up and seeing Din that first time, and is that the last thing Grogu sees before he dies, or is it salvation? Is it a new father? They're looking up and they're seeing death in the form of the Imperial light cruiser. But then that Mythosaur image was the first thing to be like, I wish I saw this with 1,000 people, because I bet people cheered for the Mythosaur image, because it's literally what we're talking about in this sort of Mandalorians are coming. You look up and what do you see? Do you see the shadow of death, or do you see something better? Yeah. And the fact that it's this quote of like, the droid is so frightened and says, "Oh, that's not the Empire. That's Mandalorians." Like, so they're on our side then. And Grief Karga says, "Hope so. There are welcome guests."
Yeah.
That you could look up and you could see the image of the mythosaur, and it isn't. Grab your children, hide your valuables. Go to your safety rooms. It's neighbors, you know? And I think that idea of who do the Mandos want to be really continues throughout this episode of Din commits to Bo-Katan because he sees in her what he values about being a Mandalorian.
Right.
We've talked a lot about the Children of the Watch. You know, are they a cult? What is negative about them? I still think even if the show doesn't dive deeper and doesn't twist the knife more, I think my morality is it's wrong that the armor limited Din's view of the galaxy. That she didn't give him all the information so he could choose the way for himself. She just told him this is the way. There is a danger of rigidity. There is a danger of beginning to worship violence. All these things. But what Din keeps revealing to us is this is what being a Mandalorian means to me. It is character and loyalty and honor. And great to point out Din celebrating Bo-Katan's father dying to save other Mandalorians, but even goes to Din in Book of Boba Fett when I don't think Din cares a whole hell of a lot about who's going to run Tatooine.
Right.
And Boba Fett's not even a true believer. But Boba Fett's really I'm paraphrasing, but like, we might die here. Are you really not gonna run? You're really gonna, you told me you'd stay here and help, and you're really gonna do it. And Din has this is the way.
Yeah.
There for him, that is the way. And that is why he is committing to Bo-Katan, because he sees in her the best of what being a Mandalorian means to him. And I also think it's there in Bo-Katan in a lot of what Bo-Katan is doing. There's multiple ideas of Mandalorians acting with self-sacrifice and acting in the spirit of defense. I'm going to make a choice to save others, to help others. That's why Bo-Katan surrendered the Darksaber. Yeah, I think Bo-Katan felt ashamed to do that, right?
Yeah.
That is an affront to her honor as a warrior, to bend the knee and lay down the blade and to hand it over without even a fight. I think that was the revelation, is I think a lot of us pictured this, you know, the Empire's laying waste to Mandalore, and Moff Gideon fights his way into the throne room, and Bo-Katan tries to fight him off, but he wins and he takes the Darksaber, and the idea of like, she handed it to him is a wound to her and a sacrifice that she made because, as she says, I didn't trust him, but it was the only chance to save our people. So that's a story in the past about, well, this is Mandalorian. The way is making sure that as many of us can live as possible. I thought it was powerful that Bo-Katan has the Darksaber. She's got Gideon right in front of her. And what she's expressed she's wanted in past episodes of The Mandalorian is to wreak vengeance upon him and to prove her dominance by taking his head, right? Yeah. She's got a perfect moment there of the great Star Wars, save what you love, don't fight what you hate. And the fact that the first thing she uses that saber for, that saber that's supposed to symbolize bringing everybody together, is not to rush out there and try to take him on and to try to prove her dominance and take his head. She uses it to give the Mandalorians a fighting chance to live. She chooses to save people with that Darksaber. What do you think about that?
I love that. I'll start there at the end with that. It was great watching it the second time with Grace. She yelled out like, "Lady, use the sword!" and I had that moment too. It's not quite where's the pulse rifle. Right. which I'm still like, where's the pulse rifle? Might help a bit here. I'd love a documentary series on where the pulse rifle go. But again, it's so Star Wars to me, right? In a series that's based, one of the central moments of the series that you and I always talk about is Luke throwing down his lightsaber to win. and sacrifice himself in the process. He didn't throw it down to win. He threw it down to die in a way, in an effort to. And I don't even think in a way of like, if I'm almost dead, my dad will save me. No, the end game was I'd rather die than become what you want me to become. And I think there's a little bit of that going on here, maybe a lot of that going on here with Bo. The blade is out, and I'm going to get it. I'm going to use that blade, this supposed symbol of leadership, this symbol of our society and our culture. I'm not going to use it to fight to the death. I'm going to use it to get us out of here. That's very powerful to me, very intentional. And I, for one, and I understand it might not beat expectations, but the clerical error of winning it from Bo or from Din, I clearly behind, as we talked about, and this revelation of how she lost it, I think is important, and especially for this blade that is, Excalibur to Mandalorians. What does it truly mean? Is it power, or is it our survival? Is it death, or is it salvation, like you've pointed out? And that goes to the blade as well. And I thought it was a great use of it.
Yeah, when previously had it, he claimed many Jedi had died on that blade, and it was his power. It was death and dominance, and Bo-Katan's using it in a different way now. I think that was great. And I really echo everything that you said about Paz Vizsla. It was an epic act of sacrifice. It wasn't almost every time we've seen Paz Vizsla act, other than, working to save his son Ragnar, I guess. And he did work together to save Din from the Bounty Hunters Guild and let him escape with Grogu. Yeah. So I won't be that hard on Paz, but what we've seen Paz start a lot of fights over.
Yeah.
Dominance crap, right?
Yeah.
I want that blade. Why does Din get to be going out of here being the bounty hunter all the time? I want that blade.
Yeah.
You can't make that move in space darts, whatever it is. So to see him really, really, to see that contrast of Bo-Katan of like all of us together, you are no less a Mandalorian to me. We've got it covered. Let's go. And for him to say, no, I really need to buy you a chance to survive, and knowing he's not going to make it, right? That was a sacrifice. There was no doubt about it.
No doubt about it. And look, I think there's a 2% window if he could have run back. So I'll talk about that some other time. But this is someone who's got the fight or submit vibe, like you said. Either you win or you die type of mentality. And so it's weird in a good way. Like that man, that character, it's like, nah, I'm gonna. By fighting, I'm submitting in a way to my enemy so others can go on. Others can take their wingman and jump and win the game. That.
Well, in his sort of surprise speech in the previous episode, siding with Din about helping Navarro, he talks about like we've been hidden forever, and basically like Mandalorians can be heroes. And to me, that goes to that death or salvation. You look up and they're coming. And, the people in Navarro looked up and the Mandalorians were salvation. They were heroes. They helped save the town. And that seems to be a continuation of this great question of who do the Mandalorians want to be? And Paz Vizsla, on his best day, wants to be a hero. Like I think in his helmet, he was rocking David Bowie's song. We can be heroes as he is fighting to the end, throwing people over cliffs. It was such a heroic choice of this is what I want. I want Ragnar to know my song, and I want this. I don't want my song to be I got stabbed in the throat fighting over a board game. It was I gave my life so other Mandalorians could live.
Yeah. We could be Mandos just for one day.
Yeah, just for one day. Final big picture thing for me is I think that there was this really interesting idea of agency, in particular with Grogu. That this is an episode where there's a fun subversion on. We're all debating what his first word was going to be. Does no count?
Yeah, I'm almost there with it. Yeah.
Yep. So there's plenty to argue about, but I think that's a picture of agency, that he has a voice, literally. He can communicate. His choice to be in that armor, even though it's clear that Din was not entirely sure about it, but didn't bring the the daddy hammer down. He said he didn't like it, but it was Grogu's choice. I really saw it as, it's a fun thing. It's a practical thing, as everybody's been saying. It's going to generate some action figures, and I'm going to buy most of them.
Yes.
But it also, yes. But it also, to me, it was part of his evolution this season of I don't think there's been a ton of focus on Grogu, but Grogu has been offered not just to be with Din, but to choose to be a Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
The armor said, basically, follow me in here. Listen to this magic hammer that makes you reflect on your trauma.
Yeah.
He's starting to look at a thing he doesn't want to look at. He's trying to babble, this is the way. He's choosing to be a Mandalorian, and I feel like this is his version of, I can't be in the armor yet, but this is my armor.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me a Mando, and he's choosing that. There's even that moment where, fair enough, Din says it for him, I'll go and so will Grogu, but he drops his little meat and stands up
Be
counted. He stands up to be counted.
Yeah.
He doesn't get that much taller, but he stands up to be counted. There's so much agency. And then, of course, bringing his Jedi culture and training to bear, his perspective, I'm going to go up and make the Rancor sleep because I see things differently now that didn't learn that from me. There's so much just agency in everything that Grogu does that he's given the room to choose for himself, and we're seeing his choices.
Yeah, no, seeing Grogu's choices play out this season is pretty much, to me, the central story with him, I would think, right? All along the way, leading up to this perfect moment. Yeah, great action figures to come. Can't wait to see them and watch you buy them so that I can live through you on that. But yeah, no, I think it all comes down to that, the yes, no, and standing up for himself. Beautiful stuff.
Yeah, and I think that was, for me, some of the fist pumping and cheering moments in contrast to this villainy that I talked about. Moff Gideon's villainy being a little bit over the top in its presentation, which I like, and I also understand if some people struggle with. But within that, there's an extra horror in this episode, an extra terrifying taking away of agency. We talked about him taking other people's cultures, but the way he wraps Din, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way he's, bringing him to whatever interrogation, and we can talk about what will happen next, but just like everything hanging over that is Moff Gideon going to take Din's agency away by taking off his helmet? And it gets to me into this very real world evil, this very real horror of taking away other people's agency.
Yeah, no, the imagery of it, of Din being wrapped up, I'm with you on that there too. And as far as Gideon being over the top, I absolutely think he is, like we talked about, and sometimes I want him to speak in shorter sentences, but I think it's the point. I think it's the purpose of it there. He is proud to be all evil.
It's a villainous thing to need other people to know that you are quote unquote better than them, right? And
it's something.
Yeah. What, if anything, then do we make of this title? We talked about who could be a spy. How do you feel about that?
I guess we'll see. I'll tell you what, the first time this episode ended, and again, I want to admit, fell asleep halfway through. I did not miss the episode. I went back to the point that I missed. But an episode ended, and I go, why the bleep was it called The Spies? There ain't no spies in that yet. So it's a wonderful game of mystery. After I woke up and understood a little bit better, I think it is inviting you to wonder the best of ways. It was in some ways to me a great use of the title to really hang that over the entire episode for me.
I thought it was really powerful because it to me it makes pretty literal sense with Kane, right? Of her being in the midst of the New Republic. We've seen her already twisting Tuttle, Space Timothy Meadows around her finger, and being able to undermine things, and what she did to Pershing, and what all is she up to, and how many are there like her?
Yes,
undermining the good intention of the amnesty program.
Yeah.
So I think there was that question of, this is literally about Kane, but also knowing that there's a shadow council, and wondering how many there are like her. Are there spies within the shadow council? I don't think there's anything in the episode necessarily that is being really explicit about, are there spies within the Mandalorians, but I kind of took it a little bit more is trust. They need to come together to survive. Trust is so fragile.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that's going to undermine that trust? I'm right now. I'm feeling like the armor is being fairly sincere, but I still have, we cut to shots of her helmet just clearly taking in information and not responding, and every time it makes me feel like, well, that's got to piss her off. Yeah, go for it.
Well, to pull out like a whiteboard and start writing down spy points, right? On who it might be. I think this episode plays with that. And by the way, I love you. It does start with Kane, and that's why this whole it hangs over all the episode of who can you trust, right? It really sets it up, and we know we can't trust her. We learned that. I mean, I think even during that episode, we all kind of felt Pershing, Dr. Penn Pershing, leave her, walk away, go hang out at Dexter's diner. There's so much evidence for all of them. Well played, Favreau, Filoni, and Femia. But I keep going to the armor. Time out. I think Axe Woves is the spy, so I'll put my money down on. Okay. That's what I think. But the armor, the way it's played, I have all these questions because of what you just said. How does this person, this woman here in charge that we've known since from the start of the show, she's turned on a dime to like, you know what, Bo, take your helmet off. You know what, we have to do this. Let me clink my hammers. I got I got both the talking hammer and the talking plier. We need to come together. And it's possible for people to do that. And it's possible. It takes a leap of faith from me to believe them, but you got to trust them until they say otherwise. So I'm trusting her until she says otherwise. She's great in a fight, but I know she didn't carry much into it. And I know I don't know if she's got the pliers and the hammers hanging on the back of her belt, but I'll take the injured, back up. That's good for us. That makes him stronger for the bigger fight, makes him stronger to help us take back Mandalore. So it's all good, but you're so right. There's a lot of blank stares on a mask that has, a built-in blank stare to it, but there's a lot of, Emily Swallow seems to be playing it as, I'm just going to sit and watch this. And
I'm just going to let this play out. Yeah.
Let it play out. And so that's why I think there's reasonable doubt to all these candidates. I think the survivors, obviously there's a lot of, oh, you want to go to the Forge? Oh, yeah, we'll take you right there. So you've either been there, you know where it is. Have you not gone down? Have you not seen the base that's buried deep down inside? I don't know. They're suspect, but to me, I don't know. There's something about Woves seems so weak and a thirst for power. But and where was he when the Imperial light cruiser was stolen? Well, what was he doing? What were you doing? Yeah. That's right. Yeah, I think that's a possibility. I think that there was such a great tension when the armor was going back up to the ship. You're waiting for the dime to drop on the terror that is encountering them, and my wife and I are like, great tension, because to me, I didn't realize that. I thought it was a great surprise that Gideon has so disgustingly usurped their culture that he's living, that his base is in the heart of their civilization. It's like, Gideon, get your own life. But before knowing that, there are long, tense shots of the armor slowly making that trip. For me, there was the tension of, is Gideon's fleet going to pop in, or is she going to emerge from the clouds and the Mandalorian fleet is already destroyed? The episode is clearly setting up the stakes of, no, they got to warn them before all those interceptors and bombers get up there. But then there's also the, like, is it the armor, like, happily being like, Bo-Katan's stronger than I thought. This is what needs to happen. I'm happy to play the essential role of caregiver. Or is there, a reason that she's slipping away? I'm feeling right now like the storytelling is simply that she changed her mind and realized that in order to live, they needed to bend a little bit. To me, it's already bending in their culture that they've been hiding, and that the way is hiding. That's not normally the Mandalorians. I think from her perspective are conquerors. They shouldn't have to hide, but they will to survive. To me, it works with her perspective that she's had throughout the show of anything to survive. Mandalorian survival is more important than anything.
But I also agree with you that it still feels like some tension, which is like somebody give the armor her own talking hammer and spill.
Yeah.
What do you feel? How much of it a sacrifice is it for you?
Yeah.
To change your mind about Bo-Katan.
Yeah, this goes to you and I have said before of like, hey, give us that sit down conversation between Bo-Katan and the armor. They got a lot to discuss and a lot to work through, and we might not get that because it just might be the armor showing in her actions that no, I'm with you, I'm on board. But yeah, so maybe it speaks to my nature that I just can't trust her yet. So,
yeah, maybe, but and maybe she won't make it. We will talk about that a little bit more. Any other big picture ideas before we take a quick break?
No, not at all.
All right, we're going to take a quick gravelly-throated break, and we'll be back to continue discussing Chapter 23, The Spies. Who are they? We don't know. Back in a moment. And we are back to continue our discussion of Chapter 23 of The Mandalorian, The Spies. There was a lot of canon lore stuff, so we're going to dive into that. I think, Ken, the biggest thing is probably all of the, Imperial Remnant clarity.
A lot.
And how that sets up where Star Wars storytelling might be going in Ahsoka in this newly announced film that Dave Filoni is doing, which is the New Republic's big confrontation with a strong Imperial remnant. That's what we know. I think we've all spun out and made lots of guesses and assumptions. Some of them already been pushed back on in the press, right? About it. Nobody said it was an Avengers style meetup, but some of us are going to that. But the questions about what this might be, all of it is sort of set up in this scene, I think.
Yeah. It's a pretty impressive scene. And we saw it Celebration, and excited for the Paleon appearance after only hearing him previously in Rebels. But I was really excited for Brendel Hux. That was my moment. I was like, we're one step closer to Ray Sloan.
Yeah, we are doing it. Yeah, so these are the talking points that I want to make sure we go over. Let's start with Pelion and the Shadow of Thrawn. The name Pelion is deep in my soul from when I read those books a long time ago. I admit I do not have a deep relationship to the character, but sitting in that hall, I was feeding off the joy of others, like a little joy vampire at Pelion. And I admit it took me a couple of viewings before I noticed that holy bleep, that's Xander Berkeley playing Pelion. So I personally hope for a lot more Pelion because I love Xander Berkeley. He's in the first couple seasons of 24, which is a show I really like and have rewatched multiple times. He played a great spineless jerk of a character in The Walking Dead. And he's just one of those character actors of like, if there's a movie where Xander Berkeley orders a cappuccino, the movie's going to be about 10% better because he's just that great of a wry, sarcastic, clever character actor. I love Xander Berkeley, so I'm hoping for a lot more Pelion.
Yeah, I think we're going to get that. I don't think you cast for that, right? For that one little shot, and I'm excited for more. I thought he was great.
Yeah. How did you? So in this scene in this episode of The Mandalorian, where Gideon's kind of poking about, like, you keep saying Thrawn's gonna come back. There was a sort of a Thrawn is Snuffleupagus vibe from back in the day when Sesame Street did the weird thing where there was a creature that only some people could see and other children couldn't. How do you feel about? Obviously, we know that Thrawn does live. Thrawn is coming back. We were lucky to see his face in that exclusive clip on the Ahsoka panel. He's coming back. But from Gideon and the rest of the Shadow Council's perspective, do you think Thrawn is actually around, or is Pelion just really bluffing to keep his power in this group?
That's a great question. I think there's a little bit of. I think I took it as a little bit of bluff in a sense of playing out the string a little bit, or pulling out the string, I should say, to just like, hey, yeah, he just took a lunch break. You just missed him. A little bit of that energy, which means we're going to get some great storytelling. Fill that in for me. I don't think Thrawn doesn't strike me as the type that would be like, just keep telling him I'm coming. And he's one that will show up. He's one that if it's on the schedule, he'll be at the meeting. He'll talk to you. which makes me hungry for some Gideon and Thrawn conversations perhaps later on. But that's kind of where I took it at. There's a little bit of behind that blustery mustache. There's a little bit of Paleon going, bleep. They're asking for him again. They might want. Now they want to change leadership. That's the way I took it. I think it's open to interpretation, of course, but that's where I went with it.
Yeah, I took it as whatever happened to Thrawn after the Purgles got him and he went to Purgatory or Purgletown or wherever he went, that there's a price to pay.
Yes.
In recovering him, in his health, in whatever he went through, in that maybe he's on the ship, but he's not in good shape. Or Pelion knows where he is, but he hasn't fully located him yet. It felt to me like Pelion using his name, that Pelion's a true believer and wants Thrawn to be in charge, but that there's a reason that Thrawn's, I don't think he's back in his dressing room like he's the Rolling Stones going, let him wait another half an hour and they'll be more excited to see us. I don't think he's doing that.
Yeah. I don't think he's doing that either. And there's some power in place. There's clearly some equipment in place. There's clearly this unknown regions remnant that's doing pretty well for themselves. They got enough TIE interceptors and bombers to send out. So I was fascinated by that. And it made me think exactly what you're talking about is, as we start to get more of the Thrawn in this canon era, storytelling of after that and where, he and Ezra went to and all that stuff. I do believe we'll get some of that, if not all of it soon in the Ahsoka show, but that I want there to be a price for what happened, not just because I'm rooting against Thrawn, but just like, I hope he doesn't land on his feet, tip a Purgle for the ride and start a armada.
Yeah. Well, he was certainly moved off the board successfully enough that he didn't come back during the Galactic Civil War, and neither did Ezra, right? When they had every reason to.
Exactly.
So speaking of moving off the board to perhaps the unknown regions, we got Commandant Brendel Hux, played by a Gleason, much like Donald. Brian Gleason, Donald's brother, right?
Yeah, Brian Gleason, indeed, yeah.
Awesome. I was really thrilled by that because I love the character of Armitage Hux. I love the character of Brendel Hux. Some major canon, if they don't alter it further, to quote Vader, is talking about deals in Star Wars canon. There's a bunch in that Phasma book, if I'm remembering correctly, with Brendel Hux and how he meets his end.
Yes.
So it was pretty cool to see the actual character and also to feel like this was a character that is not just a fun pop-up cameo, but knowing all this kind of storytelling that's coming was also, putting a chess piece on the board of storytelling. I want to talk about Project Necromancer, but I first just want to get your Hux feelings.
I love it. And I'm just going to put it on the board here of just like, this is some sequel love. and I know that I don't necessarily think you and I go directly at that as much, but this is with the Praetorian Guards and there's some sequel love going on. And sorry, not sorry if that upset some folks out there. It's just the way it is. And these are characters that exist. And there's an interview with IGN with Filoni and Favreau, I think you all should check out. I just caught up to it because, again, when you're at Celebration, you actually miss most of the news and interviews coming out of Celebration. And I finally sat down watching it, and it's just, we've heard some of the stuff before, but Filoni's got this thing where it's like, I got this big whiteboard and I'm updating things, and I have postcards, or note cards, and I move them around, and this includes all of the stuff going on, all the pieces of canon, so to speak, of where can go with this. And Favreau will come in and go, hey, I got this idea. Well, okay, that can go here. That contradicts this. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit of this interview, but that made me really excited. And that Dave respects it all enough, and everyone around this show respects it enough to be like, hey, we've got some pieces in place. Yes, we might move them. You're right. Some of the exact details of Brendel Hux, by the way, other than this Gleason playing him and he sounds like him, this is not how I envisioned Brendel Hux to look. He's described a little bit more of a not well-dressed imperial figure, I should say. And so they're already not drastically changing it, but like it's a little different vision of him. But I'm excited about it because we've had this kind of untouched, unexplored, not just unknown regions, but in the storytelling where you've heard Chuck Wendig say, "Oh, I put a lot of Luke stuff in Aftermath. They told me to take it out." And there's a lot of, hey, how did Snoke come into power was a question before we knew even Palpatine was out there still, all that kind of stuff. That was all possible. But there's so many wonderful questions that I've had, and I know a lot of sequel era fans have, and a lot of Star Wars fans have. And this felt like a big, like, again, I'm never here for answers. I don't want a checklist, but it's just like, oh, this is where I started getting really excited when I said at the top of the show of, at times I'm not the biggest Thrawn fan. I have some issues with Heir to Empire, but I know I'm blah, blah, blah. I've said it so many times. But then I was just like, man, but we are this is an era of Star Wars storytelling. Mm-hmm. We are now going to start exploring. And this is a key component. Hux, Brendel Hux, Ray Sloan, Gallius Rax and his Shadow Council, all that kind of stuff. We might start hearing more than those names. We might start seeing it in action. And I'm excited about that.
Me too. Like, I love the idea of the Hux family, that Armitage is the scion who is sort of raised obsessed with this version of the Empire that he's too young to have actually experienced himself. Mm-hmm. I think one of the great things about the sequel trilogy is the number of characters who are, everyone is reckoning with the past. In my opinion, that's one of the main points of the sequel trilogy, and some of that is explicit with Kylo hating it and trying to find a way to kill the past, which you can't, and Rey being afraid to even leave the planet, but finding a way to move forward. I could go on and on about how all the different major characters that they all face the past, and they choose to grow and take it with them and move forward into the future, or they let their obsession with the past just rot them and destroy them. And Hux is one of those. Is like, he's loyal to a past that he never really experienced, because if the book canon remains intact, is because of his abusive father indoctrinated him. And that's the guy who made Armitage Hux like that. And able to move forward and have his own existence because he's obsessed with the past he never experienced. Taking the galaxy back to an alleged good old days. That to me is really interesting storytelling that I want to see more of. And I saw another strong opinion Facebook post, and as always, people can have whatever opinions they want, but it was, someone basically saying, like, I understand that they did some things in Mandalorian or announced some things at Star Wars Celebration that are going to try to prop up Palpatine's return, the laziest piece of Star Wars storytelling. I don't want to hear any stories that are trying to prop up that lazy piece of blah, blah, blah. And there's going to be those opinions. But what's strong and powerful to me about this is that it's not fixing. There's nothing, in my opinion, there's nothing to be fixed. But even if you didn't like the sequel trilogy, a lot of this is being led by Dave Filoni, who at Celebration told the great short little story of, I was working with George. He hired me to work on the Clone Wars. I came up with this character, and George said, cool, I like that character. She's going to be Anakin's apprentice. And Filoni saying to George Lucas, Anakin doesn't have an apprentice. And George Lucas being like, yeah, he does. And when the Clone Wars came out, and people my age, the people that I knew, did not like the prequels, and like, it's either it's more of this or they're trying to prop that up, right? So here we are again, full circle. And now many, many people love the Clone Wars. It expanded the palette of the galaxy. It showed us things that we thought, we already know the canon answer, and Anakin didn't have a Padawan, period. And now Ahsoka is one of the most influential, beloved characters in Star Wars. We learned so much more about Obi-Wan Kenobi, about the galaxy. All of the groundwork for these Mandalorians, So I think I'm excited for the sequel trilogy to experience what the prequel trilogy did, which is to fill in more storytelling. And it isn't about fixing it to me. It's about the opportunity to tell more interesting stories. That's
it, because as I said up top, it's not just simply the connection of it all and answering this and that. That's part of it, but it's more storytelling in an era which we know nothing. And there's some big things going on. Where's Mothma, Leia, and Han, and how do you deal with that because of the realities of actors and performers and I'm looking at that movie that Filoni's got, and I'm like, how do you not have Leia in it, or Han, or anything like that? And we got some amazing technologies out there, without a doubt, and there's different ways you could approach that if they want to approach it. But I'm just excited for exactly what you said. And I think that's when this episode, it was sitting around in my brain for a few days because I couldn't watch this episode, and I just saw people getting excited, and a little bit of Grumpy Ken took over of like, I don't like Heir to the Empire. I don't want this. I don't want it. I don't want it. And then I thought more about it, and then and once we had seen this opening thing, and I just thought more about Brendel Hux. It's so weird that it all is around this character. But what's going on, and this is a new era to explore. It's not answers to get, it's stories to learn, and that's why I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about the Clone Wars too, of like, where would the clones have been? They would have been unfortunate pawns if it was just the movies. Now we know so much more about them. Their story matters. The individuality matters. Those are the kinds of stories, those rich world building stories that I think are possible in this era. It's interesting to me, not in a fix-it way, but did Snoke have agency? What was he literally a meat puppet? Palpatine's hanging there and his jaw's moving, and so is Snoke's. Like that, all of that is incredibly interesting and powerful to me. And this, what's going on with this Imperial remnant, the New Republic trying to make it all work. Where do they succeed? Where do they fail? All those things are interesting, rich storytelling opportunities, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, where is Admiral Ray Sloan? I haven't read that IGN article, but if what you're saying is, Filoni's got note cards. I'm sure one of them says Ray Sloan, hugely popular character from the publishing side. Fascinating perspective, and clearly somebody who might have been able to take to learn some lessons, but has clearly been taken off the board by the time of the sequel trilogy and not in the Shadow Council. What are your thoughts on Admiral Ray Sloan?
I truly think we're one step closer to getting her in live action. We had her in the video game, was Squadrons, right? Comics, books, and she's a big piece in that puzzle. And I don't think it's a great end, but that's the thing too. I don't even know that, right? Yes, I've thought in my mind, she was at one point killed and removed. Maybe she decided, nuts to all this, I'm going out. I'm going somewhere else, because she's someone who not serves herself in a selfish way, but that's part of her story. That's some of the final moments with Gallius Rax in the Aftermath series. You will serve the Emperor. You will go on. Isn't that great? And she's like, no, I'm not. I'm doing this for myself, my own vision of what could be. Some great stuff there. And then she's removed. So now I really think if that, again, I'm glad you mentioned again. It's a great little bit of that interview of just Dave going, I got all these, and by the way, it's not something that's like he was stating it's an official, war room of Star Wars planning. It just seems like it's his hobby. He just goes home at night and is like sitting there with his partner going, oh, look at that. Okay, I haven't mentioned we got Gallius Rax. What can you do with that? What can you do with younger Phasma at some point? She comes in the picture. It's kind of exciting. And as Star Wars continues to move forward, it gave me confidence that someone like Ray Sloan will pop up in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I'm really hopeful for that. And I think we tend to sometimes go, well, here's the dot we know at the beginning of this story. Here's the dot at the end. There must be a straight line, right? In the great Clone Wars animated series storytelling, the amount of storytelling that's happened on the publishing side I think we used to have that with the rebellion, right? Of like, well, the Empire took over, then Mon Mothma and Bail Organa started the rebellion, right?
Yeah.
Well, no, it's much more complicated and interesting than that. And I feel the same way about like a character like Ray Sloan, of maybe she had enough and partnered with some alien species in the unknown regions we've never met and almost took down the First Order, right? Or was a rival, or it's really fun to think about what storytelling could be there.
Yeah.
All right, moving on from Ray Sloan, because I bet we'll have an opportunity to talk more about her. Let's talk about Project Necromancer. Do you think this is just directly tied to Palpatine? Obviously, that necromancer is, bringing back the dead. There was also a kind of an important canon revelation that Gideon's cloning efforts, the thing that motivated plot-wise a lot of the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, trying to get Grogu's blood, is a side project, and the real cloning efforts, the big cloning efforts, are Brendel Hux's project and obsession. How do you feel about the Gideon revelation that it's a selfish little side effort? And do you think Project Necromancer is just plain old bring Palpatine back?
It's hard for me to say no to that, right? It's pretty clear. I mean, you're using, we're rolling dice and playing Magic the Gathering. You bring in that term necromancer in here. We got some fun nerd stuff going on, and I love it. It's hard for me to say that isn't related to what's going on in Exegol. That's part of what he's there for. He's a little bit more directly involved with the contingency. I think that's some of the final moments with him and Gallius Rax. So yes, I think that's it. But I think my favorite thing was kind of to some of the bigger things we've been talking around about Gideon. It is about his own desires and his own search for power. Yes, he says, long live the Empire. Sure, absolutely. He loves the toys too, but it is about Gideon, and that whatever's going on is his own game is fascinating to me, because that's how it works on the dark side, which means that's how it fails often on the dark side. And there's always someone who's going to come and take what you're doing. So he's kind of doing that to them. They're doing it to him. I love that. I love that it's not great. You got Grogu so we can bring Sheev back. And again, there might be more details. I just don't look at it as simply as that. But Necromancer, I kind of, to me, simply is that. But I love the reveal. It just made sense for Gideon. This is about him. He's the villain here.
We've talked about it for years now, about the Mandalorian, as the cloning stuff emerged, as we heard M count and saw weird shapes, like, is that a Snoke? That there's a natural desire to change it into, that's how they're trying to make this work for Palpatine. But you and I have talked for years about, it seems much more like Gideon is obsessed with himself and his own power. We meet him monologuing about how superior he is to everyone in that cantina. He knows who they are, and he knows why they're going to give up and why they're going to lose. And and this obsession with Mandalore in particular, and that Mandalore challenged him, and now his life's work is to prove, like, you didn't own me. Yeah. Like, in almost it's villainous and frightening, but it's almost also like a sad, childish, like, I need to prove I'm better than them. So we've been talking for years, and I'm curious now about, like, I think he's trying to give himself some kind of power, not hand it to anybody else. Yes. And I don't think that's the way the Force works, that he can just give himself a Force injection and now he's got powers. But I think we could see something unnatural, an unnatural manipulation, torturing the midichlorians to make them do something the same way kyber crystals can be tortured. To give himself a brief unhealthy burst of power or others. I think that's what Gideon is up to. And Project Necromancer, it's hard not to read it as in service of the one true leader. They're talking about new leadership, and Brendel Hux says Project Necromancer is in place for that, meaning new leadership of, like, great. Thrawn can manage the store until we get Project Necromancer working. Yes. And then we're back into business with the true Empire and the one true Emperor.
In G.I. Joe terms, Gideon's Cobra Commander, Thrawn is Destro, and Necromancer is Serpentor. They're trying to build the perfect leader again by bringing old Sheev back. I'm excited about it overall here, but just it's similar. Project Necromancer and the idea that it's Palpatine is similar to me. Again, we don't know. So this all could be changed. Maybe they're literally building another leader. I don't know. Maybe that's Snoke, right? Maybe it's that. But could be. But whatever it is, it's similar to when Luke shows up at the end of season 2 of, no, we didn't do that for for just as a simple wink and a nod, that's the character that needed to be there when we really thought about it. So if you're building all this up there, Snoke or Palpatine, I think it's more Palpatine to me than Snoke, but I don't know yet. It's there. So it's not just a simple piece on the board you got to deal with. It's like, it's fun. It's there. That would make sense. That's what they would be talking about. This is the long game for Palpatine. He's always been obsessed with this stuff. So it would be there. It just makes sense.
Yeah, and I like the idea that it to me, it's more interesting storytelling that there were leadership people in the First Order who were aware of it, and taking part in it. I understand how you can take some of the lines in the Rise of Skywalker and feel like some of the leaders of the First Order aren't aware of it, but aren't aware of Palpatine, aren't aware of the Final Order. Kylo clearly wasn't, but Allegiant General Pride was. So it could be that there's kind of a hand-picked glitterati that knows the big picture plan, and not everybody does by the time of Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome. Moving on to some other canon stuff. I don't think they are named in the episode. I might have missed something in the press, but the Gideon's new troopers are reminiscent in design. They're different, but they're reminiscent of the Imperial Super Commandos led by Gar Saxon in Rebels. And as many people have pointed out, they are great action figure fodder.
Yes, they are.
More troopers. They are it's amazing how much Star Wars has over the years. The Stormtrooper look and the Mando look have talked to each other, informed each other, birthed of the same design process. Then it became Boba Fett. Then the initial clone armor was kind of Mandalorian armor, and it had some connection there. With the helmet shape, back and forth and back and forth. The Imperial Super Commandos are Mandalorians who are loyal to the Empire, and now we have what looks like kind of a private guard of Gideon. Using actual Beskar, he confirms, mined from the planet itself right there, but clearly troopers. How do you feel about them?
I think the look is they have too much gray in the outfit for me. All right, that's my one critique. Too much gray, but I know I like it, and I like it's the evolution of it. Like that's his version of it. I also like that later on, maybe someone like Hux is like, let's go back to the classic Stormtrooper look. All right, I like season 1. All right, let's do this. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, and if you're into collecting and building up your armies with figures, you might have a chance here.
Yeah, they looked cool to me. I liked a little bit of the visual connection to the Imperial Super Commandos.
Yes,
I liked that they looked very, very Imperial. The Stormtrooper helmet and all of its various iterations have a little bit of a skull, a death symbol of being skull-like. These really leaned into the it looks like a skull is staring down at me, and I really like that. Yeah,
that's a good look. That's a good description.
Speaking of slightly different armor worn by scary people, let's talk about the Praetorian Guards. You were talking about it's just this great sequel pop because, wow, we know them, or we know versions of them. What were your thoughts on seeing them kind of barely break a stride, killing old paws? Let's start there, and then I got some other questions about the Praetorian Guards.
I mean, look, I just like the mention of them up top. I didn't. I at the time was like not sure. I didn't think, they're definitely going to show up at the end, right? I like, that's awesome, and you can order them. Put them on layaway and pay for them later. This is wonderful. I like their appearance. Look, in terms of pro wrestling, this is how you do it. You got the big guy. How's he going to take the loss? He fights everyone else, and then there's a run in by 3 guys at the end who cheat to win. That's how you tell the story. That's how you do it. And they look good. Love the design. The kind of a cross between the Royal Guards of the previous era, like the helmets. Little Mando vibe, and later on they're like, hey, you guys can pick your helmets, go a little different. I really love them, and talk about more figures to get. And look, as someone, and you're right there with me, buddy, is someone who for a lot of 2018 had to be careful about who we mentioned we like Last Jedi too. This felt good, man. Now life isn't about wins and losses, but this was a good moment.
Well, just the images and the ideas from specific movies that people develop strong opinions about and narratives are formed around, those things start breaking down when the individual pieces of those films become beloved. And seeing the first step of the Praetorian Guards aren't a symbol of The Last Jedi, a movie that invites extremely strong opinions, viscerally strong opinions from every conceivable angle. Now the Praetorian Guards, this is one of those first steps of like, but they're just going to be the Praetorian Guards. And yeah, they're from The Last Jedi, but they're also from Mandalorian. And they're also now their own story. I love that their armor is earlier. It's got, definitely the different helmets are cool and got almost like a really old Roman centurion kind of vibe to them, connecting to the Praetorian. I guess I don't need to use a different Roman name since that's in their name, the Praetorian Guards. But the way that they were used of like, okay, Hux and Pelion, you're out there farther away from New Republic eyes. If the rest of the canon we know is to be believed that they're in the unknown regions. And so they're able to amass much more resources. And here's this real special resource. They don't ask for Royal Guards 2.0, or I need some of the Emperor's former Royal Guards or whatever. They need Praetorian Guards, which to me really invited, like, there's a bigger story to tell about them than just visual dictionary, quick answer, they're Snoke's best of the best. Maybe that's all it is. They're the best of the best. Great, cool. Yeah. But for me, it suggested more like, well, where do they come from? Are they of the unknown regions? Who or what are they? Are they the best of the best, or are they some dark secret? Are they a different species? Are they clones? You know, does each one of them have a drop of some strange elixir that they must eat every day? You know, I got this sense of like, there's room to make them really interesting instead of just stormtroopers who are actually good at their jobs. How do you feel about that?
There was a story. Yeah, it's just a natural evolution, and it just made sense from the Royal Guards on. But yeah, it's beyond just being a specialized unit, but there's the pain that's involved, right? Isn't there something in the description of like, their outfits actually hurt them, like they're in constant pain and torture.
Right, that they've got like this. There's a filament that has like electricity, which is one of the things that makes it hard to cut through them. But they're in constant pain, those little visual dictionary answers that we used to have, and now there could be so much more. Yeah,
and again, that they felt this is needed, and that there's this like, oh, you want 3 Praetorian Guards? Oh, someone are you in trouble? Oh, you need help. Just even the way it was presented was solid.
Yeah, someone thinks they're going to be assassinated. I loved it. All right, a couple other canon things. We got a much more complete picture of the Purge. It's been slowly rolling out across the Mandalorian, but really step-by-step time. We know now that, in Rebels, the TV show, Mandalorian factions rally around Bo-Katan to resist the Empire, and it's a victory for Sabine, bringing everybody together. And then we cut away. There's the horrific bombing in the Night of 1,000 Tears that we see the flashback to in Book of Boba Fett, and now we know that after that initial attack, Bo-Katan surrenders, but the Empire Moff Gideon destroy everything anyway. Are you happy to just getting a lot more of this laid down on the timeline?
Yeah, a note card down on the table, so to speak. Yeah, I like it, and I talked about what it meant for Bo-Katan to lay it down, and I like that answer more than the one that I think I'd cooked up in my head. And it's been fun. It's been fun to track it, but again, this is an example of not just having this event that we know we need to have, and we needed to, how are the Mandos not in the Civil War? We need to kind of answer that question. We need to figure out what was going on with them, and this is the answer. It's more than just that. There's a great thematic use of it there, and it's been kind of fun to have them dole it out slowly.
Yeah, and for me, it's just a reminder too of like, okay, with this Imperial Shadow Council question scene, there's a lot of questions, and patience will be rewarded.
Yeah.
Final thing for me is the Death Watch canon. We learned that the Death Watch is no more. They shattered, fighting amongst themselves on the moon of Concordia. The Children of the Watch then are implied to be one of those groups. How does this change your view of the Children of the Watch, of the armor?
No, I think it kind of confirms that they are who I think they are, where they came from. I thought it was her answer is the answer makes a lot of sense. But this is in my not trusting the armor mode here, where they're like, you part of Death Watch. She's like, Death Watch is not more. It's like, that wasn't the answer. That wasn't that wasn't the question. that's not the answer to give. Did you come from it? Do you believe in it? Do you have any part of it? And her answer, again, I think is pretty truthful. That's what happened. It splintered. We all fought each other. And so, yes, it's implied that the children of the Watch are from that. But I just love that reference. And again, I curious. It's not like Dave and John aren't aware of the character of Duchess Satine, but I can't wait for that name to be just said with power and purpose. And we're getting closer there too because of the Death Watch.
No, I very much agree with that, and I really like your point. I was so happy to hear the name Death Watch said after we saw them rescue Din as a child. Children of the Watch. It's obviously all connected, but I hadn't really picked up on the fact that she deftly does not actually answer the question. And I really wanted that Mandalorian survivor to follow up with and the horns. Is that a Maul thing? Because we're not big on Maul.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, are you basically wearing a Sith Lord T-shirt on your head? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, is that what's going on here? Yeah.
Some great canon stuff. We took some time with that. We will move quickly here through some of our action and comedy. We are going to break the 2-hour mark, but we will keep ourselves moving. There is some great action in this episode, Ken. What were you drawn to?
Do you like ships flying? Do you like flying ships landing? This is the episode for you.
Look, I'm a huge fan of flying through storms, even when it's scary. I like doing it, so I like watching it.
I was fascinated with it when the cruiser lands near the covert camp. I was fascinated with it because it's just such a massive ship, even though it's small compared to other Imperial ships in the past. And to see the landing gear coming out, I was soaking up every minute of it. It was we always put this in the action section, but it was some action. Ships landing, big ships landing. I enjoyed it.
It was great. Along those lines, I loved the gauntlet passing through the storm again. I love the Mandos looking at the planet. I love all the Mandos dropping out of that gauntlet as much as possible. Drop out that gauntlet.
Yeah. No, in an episode full of a ton of action, a lot of fight and action. There's a lot of individual moments to shout out, but I just overall just like the pacing, the coordination of it. A lot of good stuff there, even in the fight over chess.
Yeah, I thought the action was well shot, well choreographed. Rick Famuyiwa was clearly a fan of screen combat, and I think it shows in his direction. I particularly liked Axe Woe's rocket launching his knee into Paz Vizsla's head.
Yeah, and then also the one where he kind of trips him later on, and Tate Fletcher takes a big bump. I loved that. It was a good fight.
Yeah, lots of the Night Owls seem to have really perfected the use of little punctuated rocket blasts. So good for you, Night Owls. Even
going over obstacles right there, because Bo Katan did it last week. I think Casca Reeves did it at one point this week.
Yeah, they're always doing it. It's great. That massive Star Wars beast bursting from the ground, the tail smash of the ship. That I'd never seen it. I just recently watched Jason in the Argonauts, and it so has that vibe of all these little figures on a ship, and that massive beast shattering the ship, and a couple of the Mandos' jetpacks exploding, and the rest of them all landing and scattering. That whole sequence was phenomenal.
No, absolutely. And talk about foreshadowing the threat emerging from the very planet itself, buried deep down. I love that. And talking up top about what Alex Damon had told you about. It's got a little bit of everything. If you love Mando, it's got a little bit and a weird creature emerging to fight you is very Mando and very Star Wars, and I like that sequence.
Yeah, and set up well by Bo-Katan saying the bombings have awakened. I didn't write that line down, but ancient beasts. That's not the way she said it, but that's the way I heard it.
Yeah.
Once we get into some of the big fighting, a couple of things I loved with the Mando against these new troopers. There's one Mando who shoots out some cable and grabs a trooper with a rope and just rocket chokes him.
Yes. I think Grace yelled, "Yeah, get it!" at that point. So.
I think there was a little glint of light on my iPad, and for just a moment, I thought Grogu was choking. We're going to cut to Grogu's little hand. I liked. There were some great hero shots of Din and Bo-Katan fighting the troopers and finding their weak spots. It looks cool, and you want to give Din in Bo-Katan some hero moments, but there's also that like, yeah, you can wear our armor, you can try to steal our culture, but we understand it. We know to get you in the knees and the throat.
Absolutely. Yeah, all that hubbaloo there from Gideon about those troops, they still fell pretty quick, I thought, in a good way.
Yep. And then for me, the pause sadness was awesome.
Mhm.
I particularly liked seeing that huge blaster start to overcook and melt, and then pause of all characters is the one who's going to do the classic action move of, look, if the gun can't shoot anymore, I'm going to hit somebody with it.
Yeah, no, and he takes it to the mat, so to speak, in that one shot where he like double axe handle with his hands the trooper on the ground and then flings him off the cliff. That was a particular highlight for me.
Yeah, I think my final highlight is he does that big move. I think he kicks another one. Like towards the end, there's just like cleanup. There's like two that are already unconscious, and he just like whoop, and it really is like, my parents are coming over to my dorm room, and I'm gonna stick that under the rug, and whoop.
Yep, indeed. And then
and I love people falling from high places, and I was rewarded.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about comedy and whimsy. What moments do you have here?
Look, there's a couple other moments, but yes and no. All else fails in comparison. One of my favorite Star Wars bits in ages. It's up there. It's a top 5 comedy moment for me, and it has great meaning, and it's used so well. And for it to lead up to the moment with Axe and Paz is great, but just that sequence is hilarious to me. It was so well written, so well timed, so well played, including the end Zillin. Bad baby. Like everything about it. And cause I'm imagining if I could put my dog in one of those, what would that, how many times my dog just hammer, yes. And then to follow it up with the cuts to the city, and it's just yes to the city. It brought such a smile on my face. I can only imagine in a theater of 4,000 people, Star Wars fans, celebration. That must have just brought down the house. I love Grogu moments. I'm a sucker for Grogu moments, and I always will be. And this is one of my favorites.
I'm right there with you. It reminded me of watching the second episode of the show, The Child. It was great to see Grogu pop in the first episode, but that second episode, just being shocked at how cute, charming, funny, how much they were getting out of that puppet. Or like, is this level of cute legal?
Yeah.
They have to register with the government to do this. It was so powerful. Easy to forget, I think, in retrospect, how much the success of The Child, of Baby Yoda, of Grogu, was one of the things that launched Mandalorian into such huge success and popularity, starting from that Rick Famuyiwa episode, The Child, that this felt so tied to it of, I love Grogu moments, but this was an evolution, and that level of, this is, to me, so funny, so charming.
Yeah.
That it's off the charts. The shock of him being able to speak and saying no. Can't wait to hear Jennifer's toddler thoughts on it. But it's about agency, right? And Din shock, like, what did you say?
Yeah.
That was great. Nope, I'm doing this, my choice. And the bad baby no squeezy might not be for everybody. I like it. But the biggest thing is the yes. That would have been funny if he just did it in Grief's office. The cut to, they walked how far away, and he's just been slamming the yes button. Star Wars is about getting past the hard things so you can enjoy everything it is to be enjoyed about the world. And seeing that this poor little creature who's been through a lot and has every reason to have trauma and has just floated around from pram to pram. You have to close the lid and hide from the world because here comes the violence again. To be walking on his own steam and be so happy about it that he can't stop expressing his joy. It's funny and it's annoying to Din, not because it's one of those like, this is hilarious to me. In real life, I'd be losing my damn mind if I was Din. Like, kid, take your hand off the button. But more than anything, to me, it's this extremely pure expression of joy, and that's why my wife and I kept quoting it. Finally got an amazing martini in London. And that's a whole other side story. And it's really like, yes.
Yeah. Now, I mean, again, I said up top, this episode hit me perhaps a little different than others in terms of it being the greatest of the series so far and all that kind of stuff. So I don't mean this with my arms folded like I'm a contrarian, but this was my favorite part of the show. All the other stuff, that's cool. That's neat. Brendel Hawk's Praetorian Guards, that's awesome. Paz dies, great. Yes. That was my favorite part of this episode. Hands down.
I totally understand. I appreciate everything that was powerful about this episode, but that was the part. Is like I would have loved to see this with thousands of people. Yes. And I am also shocked that maybe people were doing that all weekend who got to see it at Star Wars Celebration, and I just didn't have the context, so I didn't hear it.
Yeah, that's true.
But,
good point.
Yeah, up there to me with new best Star Wars quote. I want to honor that moment, so I'm going to throw out one other small moment. It was such a Grief cargo line. I really liked when he gave the bottle of space whiskey to Din and said, "That's all the way from Coruscant, so you might want to wait for a smaller gathering before you open it." It's perfect Grief of like kind-hearted, warm-hearted, a million different, bro handshakes he's shared with Din, but he still has that little whisper, like, "I got a secret. Keep this for yourself."
No, I love that. First of all, they should sell those. I would buy them. But as someone, you're like there too. You get a certain age, and I guess the only gifts people know to get you are alcohol bottles, right? Which always is worrisome, but what they think of me. And that you get a good bottle. Someone brings you some good Jameson. You're like, oh great. And then there's always like one or two friends who bring one, and you look at it, and you're like, I gotta hide this in my closet because I'm gonna drink this after everyone leaves. I don't want anyone to have this. And that's what that moment felt like.
Yeah, it really was. It was I bought this real special for you for your birthday party, and all the people here will keep drinking Paps, so don't put this out.
Don't put it out.
Is there anything that we haven't touched on this episode that you wanted to?
Yeah. Well, yes. There's one other comedy moment I want to discuss. So yes, it works for both categories.
Okay.
I'm obsessed with Gideon's kind of silly. It's well, oddly enough, doesn't work for me, but also is so funny that I love it that I don't want him to stop. His constant and bombers. He says it so many times. He's like, launch the TIE interceptors and bombers. It says here you ordered TIE interceptors and bombers. It started to read as it belonged in in Bart's treehouse when Milhouse is going through the conspiracy theory about the parents trying to remove the meal of dinner, where he says that the Rand Corporation, in conjunction with the saucer people, and Bart gives a nod. Gideon is Bart in that moment going, and the bombers. Yes, thank you. The bombers. You mentioned the bombers. It's hilarious to me because it's kind of awkward. Just say you ordered fighters, right? Or just say you ordered TIE fighters, but they're very so specific. You wanted TIE interceptors? Yes. And bombers. Like, you got it. And it's just the weird obsession with the TIE bombers. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I want to keep getting as quirky as possible because I think it really adds to his villainy. I loved his line, 2Kane at the top, report, and make it quick as I am short on time. Such a jerk. And also like, hey, Gideon, if you're really struggling for time, have you tried contractions? They save some time in your speech.
Yes, exactly.
All right, there are other comedy moments, but we should move on. For me, there was a lot of images that I really loved. A lot of them really got into the space fantasy. I kind of think the volume is at its best when it's creating fun other worlds that look like they were ripped off the cover of a paperback from the 1970s, a science fiction paperback. But that image of the TIE interceptors hanging like evil bats in a cavern,
right? Yes.
Yeah, they've done a lot to make the TIE interceptors. People talked a lot about the TIE fighters being terrifying again in Andor, and I full-heartedly, throatedly agree. But the TIE interceptors, they're too fast. There are too many, and the image of them hanging there, defiling the forge of the Mandalorian people, is just a beautiful image.
Yeah, I'm a Return of the Jedi kid, and that image was spectacular. Loved it.
Yep, I didn't get to have a TIE fighter toy, but I had a TIE interceptor because they were on discount by 1985, and I got to have one. I love them. One thing I wanted to touch on real quickly, there was the cliffhanger moment of Carson Teva discovering the Beskar remnant from the shuttle where Gideon escaped from. Do you now take it that was from his own troopers in a hint that a setup for what we discover here, that he is holed up on Mandalore, continually pillaging their culture? Or do you still think that might relate back to the spies? The idea of a spy in the Mandalorian's midst.
I think I'm gonna land on the spies aspect of it, and we should check Axe Wove's armor to see if something's missing. But I do love the angle that it's a reveal, like court. Yeah, it's a little bit of a sleight of hand. Yeah, you might think it's someone that we know and trust, but really, he's been kind of building this stuff for a while, so that would make some sense.
Yeah, it seems like we saw we saw Gideon roaming the galaxy with plenty of backup, but he knew that if I get in real trouble, I got my real power back on Mandalore, and my new Imperial commandos, whatever they're called, will come for me.
Yeah,
I think the spies thing, I'm really intrigued to see if there's a reveal, but I am up in the air about it myself. So that's my definitive prediction. Let's talk about next week. We got one final big episode. Do you have hopes, dreams, predictions for the final episode of season 3 of The Mandalorian?
I'm looking forward to Din Moff Gideon sit down, little interrogation, what we might learn from that. I think some big revelations. The thought of, Big Daddy showing up. Sorry, I'm thinking about myself after my illness and travel and all that alcohol that grief got me. I think him showing up is possible. It's really possible. To what end and why? I don't know. I don't think you need Thrawn in this, but it definitely seems like Gideon is pushing buttons, right? Set it up. So that could be interesting as well. And just getting an idea as the season wraps up, a season about rebuilding Mandalore. What does that take, and how do you recover from that kind of large scale trauma? And what's the best way moving forward? Do we get that answer, or do we get a giant step in that direction? It's the big thing I have hanging over this.
Yeah, and I think the point of Thrawn showing up or throwing up, which I would love if he's like, I'm going to adjust my head to this degree of the toilet, and I'm going to project my past food at this velocity. But I think a tag for Ahsoka makes a lot of sense for this episode. Since Ahsoka's locked, loaded, ready to start advertising its run in August, would be cool. The your song is not yet written. I've seen a couple of people tweeting about. I thought that was a great line. I thought that to me sort of tied to that great Star Wars idea of questioning. Even though you feel like you've made mistakes in life, you're not done until you're done. That's Obi-Wan's story. That's Luke's story that we get to see. Han's story. Like, we get to see a lot of older people now go. You feel bad about the mistakes have been made, but the song's not written yet. So I think there is a little bit of a, threat to Bo-Katan that will that be the end of her song. We got a mythosaur that 1, 2, 3, 4 people could ride. We don't know what happened to their baby lizard chickens.
Right.
There's a lot going on. We haven't seen Pedro's face yet this season, and there could be some real horror and trauma about Gideon taking his helmet off. I don't know how I feel about that one. I think one of the things that I'm most excited about is how Grogu gets centered in this finale. We've got a direct inversion of last season where Gideon has Din. I did wonder. It makes sense to me that Grogu is shocked, traumatized, trying to survive and fight the other day, but like that it's got to be hurting Grogu to run away from his daddy, not trying yet,
Yeah.
And I think we've seen lots of evidence of Grogu's growth. I'm wondering if I think there will be a big Force moment with him, but what will the nature of it be? How will he choose to use the Force to save who he loves?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, and just in terms of base level predictions, that's a great prediction too to hold on to, and not that this is what we do in this section, but that just makes a lot of sense. The reverse roles of it, I think, is very purposeful. So yeah, imagine Grogu in IG-12 lifting Gideon up. Force, maybe even a Maybe he uses a dark saber. I don't know. Maybe it's on the table, but I really agree with you there.
Yeah, powerful stuff. And I'm curious to see if we will see more of Grogu's past trauma.
Oh, yeah. I had that thought this morning, too, of, I definitely believe we're going to get more of that there. But will it be this week or next year? I don't know.
Yeah. Powerful, interesting stuff. We could predict all day long, but we've already gone long in this episode with our exhausted, gravelly voices. So let's wrap up with the most important question. What action figure or merch do you want inspired by this episode, Ken?
I mean, look, IG-12 with Grogu, you mentioned it. People are already calling for it. So, that's great. We'll put that on the board. But I think you need to release this Mando chess game. I think it'd be a lot of fun. I have my unofficial, official card game featured in the Han Solo motion picture card set. Give me that game. I like that. I'm a kid from the 80s and 70s. I like board games. Let's do it.
Yeah, I really want the Mando board game with alternate rules. And I don't know if I want it cruelly phrased the way that Axe did of here are the primitive rules. I'm not sure if I want that, but I definitely want alternate rules. Yeah, this entire episode, it is the endless battle of Star Wars. I joke, I've literally done it in stand-up. George Lucas did not start a non-profit organization in the 1970s. In my opinion, I don't think specific choices are made for merchandising. Mm-hmm. I think choices are made creatively, but then every once in a while there's an episode that pleases my eyes and it hurts my wallet because, troopers are what people buy. Troopers are what people make, and there are so many. Mm-hmm. So I look forward to that. But more than anything, I want the IG-12 armor Grogu for sure. It's just powerful, beautiful. And then I want a tablet that does nothing but says yes or no in that voice. Like people think I got an iPad. Like, no, this is just my tablet for saying yes or no.
Yeah, you'd all ask me to leave your party, but I absolutely would love to have that. Like just on a little because I have I have a Bigfoot one. So that's a Bigfoot. I can just do Bigfoot sounds. Give me that with just yes and no in Taika's voice. Doing IG-12 would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe throw in a maybe. Maybe there's a maybe button on there and we don't know about it. Yes, no, maybe.
Love it.
Well, we look forward to it. A big, epic episode of The Mandalorian. A big, epic episode of our report. Thanks to everyone listening. Ken, where can people find us?
Hey, you can find us on Twitter at Force Center Pod. We're on Instagram, YouTube as well. Subscribe over there. We got some cool stuff coming up, including live Q&A at the end of the month. And shorts, videos, and more kinds of fun things there. So stay tuned for that. Catch the latest episode of Figure Fights featuring Alex and Molly Damon of Star Wars Explained. We're on Instagram, YouTube. Said that. Facebook. What's the other one? Facebook, Hive Social. Oh, just search for us. Podcast available a lot of different spots. Just search. You'll find us. You can get merch at tpublic.com/user/Force Center for now. And you can support us directly, as so many have recently, at patreon.com/Force Center. So close to reaching our goal of that new Jennifer Landa series and almost crossing 400 supporters. We'd love for you to join the team because from there you get into the Discord where a wonderful community of Force Center friends are there. They build the community. They are the community. They connected in person. Star Wars Celebration. It was wonderful. So join that. Follow me at Ken Napzok. Go to my website, kennapzok.com, to link to other things I do, including streaming Fortnite on my YouTube channel, YouTube Shorts on my YouTube channel. More things coming in that regard. Stand-up shows, all those kind of things. And hey, pretty soon, maybe some stand-up that we did in London might be, available in our own lives. Stay tuned for that kind of information. Joseph, where can they find and follow you?
Yeah, lots of exciting possibilities. Feel like they're opening up from our great time in Star Wars Celebrations. We can't wait to discuss that more, all the possibilities. But you can find me on all the social media at Joseph Scrimshaw, Twitter, Instagram, Mastodon sometimes, except for I didn't post there for the last 2 weeks. My apologies. TikTok. I bought a lot of action figures, so there are a lot of not unboxing videos coming. I brought a duffel bag, and when I was coming home in LA in the middle of the night, I had a duffel bag. It looked like I was walking out of a heist movie, like I had cash, and nope, I had just a huge bag full of action figures. So those will be popping up soon on YouTube and on TikTok in the not unboxing videos. That is it. So for myself, for Ken, for Grogu, the Jedi Mandalorian who looks at life and says, yes, 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 this has been the Mandalorian Report.